when did it become cool to get rich? When I was young and I was starting in life, being cool was not about your bank account. It was about being different, it was about standing out, and it was about fighting the system. For me, I really think that farming is so cool. Farming is counterculture. You can see the creativity in people's heart, how it manifests on a farm. And I think that's really beautiful because, in my opinion, that's the antidote to mainstream everything. And what's the end game of all these farms? If the supply chain, the global supply chain, comes to blackout for a few days, for a few weeks, for a few months, for a few years, these farms are the only way to feed people. Welcome to the Market Gardener Podcast, where we believe that small-scale farming is changing the world. Join us for insightful conversations with people who are working to build a better future. A future with less mass production and more production by the masses. The revolution is in the field. Let's get digging. This podcast is proudly supported by Fortier greenhouses. If you've been enjoying the show so far, make sure to hit the subscribe button. It's a small thing to do, but for us, it means the world. The subscribe button allows us to keep promoting the show. It allows us to keep inviting new guests, more diverse guests, to have these enlightened conversations. Let's keep these conversations going. Help us by subscribing to the channel. All right, friends, welcome back to the podcast. End of summer. We're going into fall already. Wow, that was a beautiful summer we had here. I hope it was nice for you where you are. And before we start on the podcast today, I want to take the time to thank our sponsors. They're really the folks that make this possible and happen. So I want to thank them. Fortier Greenhouse. If you don't know about Fortier Greenhouse, look them up. Honestly, friends, for the price and for the quality and for all the experience that they have, not just with, shipping and supplying shelters, but also with designing them, with customizing them. They're really amazing. So look them up, Fortier Greenhouses. And thank you, Fortier, for being the main sponsor of this season. I also want to thank our friends at Growers & Co. Growers & Co. is a company that I started many moons ago. And now it's really taken off. We're designing new tools. We're building really beautiful craftsman shirts and hats and all sorts of swag for market gardeners and home gardeners. So look up the company growers.co. And thank you guys for sponsoring this podcast. I really, really appreciate it. And I want to thank you guys also. There's so much traction behind the podcast right now. It's really epic. Chris and I, we read the comments. We're really amazed about how people are genuinely interested in these conversations that we're having. I was reading the comments about when Jamie from Rutabaga Ranch was here. People were really inspired by Jamie. And it made me realize how, this is, she's just one of so many. Just one of so many graceful, beautiful farmers that are out there doing amazing work. And I really want to get more of these folks onto the show also. So if you know anyone that you think would be a great guest, please shoot us an email or drop us a line in the comment section, poking us with a name, perhaps tagging them along. It would be fun. Or if you yourself feel that you'd be a good guest, shoot us an email. Just keep in mind that we are an hour north of Burlington, Vermont, and an hour south of Montreal. And we want our guests to come and have a meal at the old mill, have the experience, meet them beforehand, and then have these conversations. So that's the only prerequisite. But if you think that you're the right person for that, I'd like to meet you. That's how it goes. So today, kind of following up on the episode with Elliot and with Jamie at Rutabaga Ranch, and I was really thinking, why is this so important? And I got into this rabbit hole about my 21-year-old son and what he's thinking about today and his influences and how I was when I was his age. And I was just thinking, when did it become cool to get rich? When did, hustling over Bitcoins and thinking about schemes and rackets to make more money fast and to retire early become a thing? Because honestly, I don't get it. When I was young and I was starting in life, like, being cool was not about your bank account, and it wasn't about, your loyalty program. And it wasn't about retiring. It was about being different. It was about standing out. It was about being a maverick. It was about doing something that was like bold. It was something that was, fresh. It was inspiring. It was about being authentic, and it was about fighting the system. And I just don't understand, how this is not what's cool today, or perhaps it is. But for me, I really think that farming answers all these bells and whistles. Like, farming is so cool. Farming is counterculture today. Farming, small scale farming with humans at the centerpiece of it, that are caretaking for land and that are nourishing communities. Obviously I've seen farms of all sorts, but I think that these small farms with young people in them, farms that have colors, farms that have diversity, farms that have a unique perspective on how they operate. These farms today, in my opinion, are the apex of counterculture in America, in North America. And I would argue in Europe. And when you're in the movement, you don't really see so much about it. When you're on your farm, you don't realize how what you're doing is epic and different and so cool, because you're obviously dealing with the struggles. You're dealing with HR problems. You're dealing with crop failures. You're dealing with, weather patterns that are crazy, drought, too much water. You're dealing with all these situations, which ultimately makes you feel perhaps sometimes like, well, this is too much, or this is overwhelming, or this is crazy. But when you sidestep a little bit and you look at what this is about and what we're doing, it's epic. And it's unique, and it's colorful, and it's counterculture. And that's really what I want to talk about today. And obviously, I would love to hear your thoughts about this. I've given it some thoughts, and I've broken down this idea of small scale farming is counterculture in kind of three things. Like, the first one is just talking about culture today and how the farms are countercultural. Then the second point would be, just this idea of diversity. This is a word, diversity, that was floating around for a little while, a few years back. And for me, diversity goes beyond just race and gender. It goes with life. It goes with, offering diversity, being diverse. It's all about not being homogenized, or not being into this consumer world where everything is blended. And I want to talk about that and really showcase how our farms, they're very important, because they are, in my opinion, the only ones proposing diversity to the modern diet of, what's going on right now with supermarkets and everything. And lastly, I want to talk about diversity and resiliency, which I think in the global scheme of thing, the number of our small farms out there and the fact that we're present and that we're multiplying and mushrooming all over the place, I think we are the antidote to a lot of the global scarcity that's possible. I'm not saying that, we're going towards gloom and doom, but we are definitely creating firewalls with all these farms. And I want to talk about that. So I hope you guys are into it. And again, drop us a line. Anytime I go on rants like this, I'm thinking about you. I'm thinking about you that's in the field. Perhaps, listening to this while you're working. I'm listening to you. I'm thinking about you that perhaps is not on a farm and you're thinking about farming, why it's important. Perhaps you want to do it. Hopefully you want to support it, but you're interested in it. And I'm trying to propose a perspective on this that is upbeat. Okay, I'm guilty of that. And I read comments where people are like, oh, JM, there you are, oversimplifying everything, always cheerleading about small farms. But really, folks, we need to hear how positive it is what we're doing. And I want to be that guy. And that's my message. I've always been like that. And also keep in mind that I'm in a space, I'm very fortunate. I get to travel all over the world now. And I go to these places where I'm hosted on farms and I meet these farming communities. I'm in Hungary. I meet these small scale market gardeners in that community. I go to New Zealand. That's the same thing. I go to Spain. I go to the US, California. I go to North Carolina, wherever I am, Canada. It's the same kind of folks. I meet the exact same folks everywhere I travel to. And it's giving me this perspective how our movement is not just global with the global word, which really means nothing, but it is. We share the same ethos. We share the same lifestyle. We share the same taste for being original, being authentic. We struggle with the same things because we're doing the same thing, which is growing food on a small scale for our community. And that has opened my eyes to the importance of our movement because it's not just here. It's based in locality, but it's global. So I call it the global, okay? The global movement that's happening right now. And perhaps there's other movements that are as strong or happening, but honestly, friends, I think that small farms today, they're the apex of counterculture because we are the originals that are fighting back, creating a new lifestyle. Think about a farm. Think about a small farm. Okay, a small farm is not like a corporate boardroom or a corporate workspace. It's not like, school where it's an 8 to 5. A farm is open-ended with the work hours. It's open-ended with the dress code. It's open-ended with what we do in a day. It changes with the seasons. It's never the same. It's under the sun. It's outside. It's rain or shine. It's going to the market. It's meeting people. It's connecting with folks to whom you sell your crops to, but it's also connecting with the folks with whom you work and with whom you also share the struggle. And that's an important piece of the puzzle because in a workspace where everything is pampered and, there's an HR solution to every problem and needs, you don't have that same kind of friction. You don't have that same hardship, which ultimately is what creates these strong bonds. Okay, so for all the farmers out there, all the growers that are listening to this and that you guys are struggling and it's hard and it's difficult and, it wasn't a season, perhaps the season to remember or the best of, you'll remember it and you'll remember with whom you were doing it. And if with these folks, you went through, this barrage of obstacles and through this, hard weather, and you came out of it alive, these are strong bonds. And this, in my farming years, is what I remember the most, is these these folks, these friends, these colleagues, these coworkers, with whom we went through these obstacles. And this is, in my opinion, a really big piece of the puzzle. Like, this is why farming is so amazing, is because it's not bland, it's colorful, it's outside, and you get to share this with other folks in a really intimate and connected way. And, I think this in itself is pretty epic. For anyone that's looking for an alternative way to live his life, they go to a farm, a small farm, and then some of them will come and leave, but others will come and stay. For many folks, and I was just talking to Chris right now before we went on about how his life was changed when he went to a farm. Chris's story is really interesting. He was a trainer before. He was, really into the outdoors, but really in training, and his connection and his relationship to nature was based on that. And then when he went to a farm, and I think it was a pretty radical farm, his perspective on connectiveness, on being together, on seasonality, on human, all changed because of that. And, there he is all these years later, invested in small scale farming, trying to promote it and helping out the best he can. And he's an amazing guy, and he's an amazing co-host. And I know you guys really love him, and I love him too. So Chris, if you're listening to this, I think you're wonderful. And please be you. And so little side notes there, but you get my message. So farms, they're very colorful, okay? And if you look at the names of all these farms, okay, so there's a lot of small farms. Just in Quebec, there's probably 200. And then if you go to each state in the US, you can have all these small farms. Most of them now are market gardens, which I think is really cool, but not exclusively. They have these names, these crazy names, Big Root Farms, or it's like all these names. It's so not corporate. They have great logos. They have event space. These are event spaces that are, all customized with what's available, what's there. It's very original. It's very rootsy. And you go to these farms and you feel that you're in a different space and time. It's not blend. It's not the corporate restaurants that are chains and everything's the same. When I go to the US, sometimes I'm like so discouraged whenever I'm close to a highway, how everything is the same. And then you go to a farm and it's, wow, okay. You can see the creativity in people's heart, how it manifests on a farm. And I think that's really beautiful and very important, okay? Because in my opinion, that's the antidote to mainstream everything, mainstream consumerism, mainstream design, because it's all based on scale. It's all based on, we're going to build the same restaurant 500 times so that we can cheap out on the material, okay? So that kind of thinking creates homogenized. I have a hard time saying that word, but you get the point. But it's not the world where I want to live in. And when you go to farms and small communities where farms are around, we've been talking about our place here for so long. It's an example of this, but it's out there. And I go and I have the opportunity to see this for myself. And it's really amazing. Have you ever heard about crate art? Okay. If you Google or go on Pinterest, crate art, I would say 1930s. You'll see amazing artwork. These are the designs, the drawings, the colorful artwork of all the vegetable growers, mostly in California, but not exclusively, but mostly in California in the 30s. I don't know if you guys think about California back in the days, but California in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, in the 60s perhaps, must have been like paradise. All this beautiful farmland, countercultural, epic things happening everywhere, just beautiful land, coastal land. And you didn't have all these rich folks buying up everything and creating these crazy communities. Like, I'm not a fan, guys. I'm not a fan of, these tech communities of rich people. Like, I have nothing against them personally, but that's not where I want to go. That's not where I want to be. Okay. I'd rather be in a rugged rural countryside land with folks that have different values and different lifestyles. Okay. So that's my own thing. But just go visit this artful work from the 30s. And you realize that everyone that was delivering vegetables, they had boxes that were customized to their taste. And it was really radical. It was really, really radical. It's really cool artwork. And you realize that it was like that before. And then probably these farms got consolidated, they became bigger, and then they became more standardized, and then they started to work hand in hand with the big chains, and then they lost probably, I don't want to say their soul, that would be not true, but they probably lost a little bit of their originality. And I think that the small scale farming movement right now with the market gardeners everywhere, they're bringing this back. And I think that's really cool. Okay. So check that out. Check out the crate art, and they make the best t-shirts. If you're looking for logos or inspiration, these mermaids, having these apples, and it's just so epic, so beautiful. Check it out. Check it out. The second point, friends, that I want to make about why our farms and our movement is so important right now has to do with diversity. And I talked about that. And I want to talk about diversity in another way. This podcast is proudly supported by Fortier greenhouses. Fortier has always been one of my top choices for greenhouses and tunnels. For over 45 years, they've been manufacturing high quality and incredibly strong structures right here in North America. Their products can withstand the heavy snow loads we faced here in the Northeast, and their prices are among the best in the market. Fortier offers excellent service and expertise, always ready to help with customized solutions. I particularly appreciate their commitment to innovation and their willingness to listen to the needs of growers. At the Old Mill, we use several of their Gothic Caterpillar tunnels and micro tunnel for season extension, and I'm always impressed with their design and build quality. Without companies like Fortier, food sovereignty just wouldn't be possible. So thank you, Fortier, for helping us growers feed our community year-round. You guys rock. Use promo code MGI10 for 10% off your first order and free shipping in select regions. Diversity for me, I speak French. I live in a French culture. Like, Quebec is, 8 million folks surrounded by 400 million English-speaking folks. Okay, so we're definitely different. We're definitely original. But that's not where I see diversity. I see diversity more in kind of a nature way. And diversity is also in the food that we grow. There's one thing that I strongly feel about is that we are what we eat. I feel strongly about that. I don't know when I read that. I don't know where. But what we put in our bodies really comes to impact us in a huge way. It's the same as what we put in our mind. It influences everything about our lives. So making sure that we eat from sources that come from good soil, good earth. We talked in length about this in this podcast, and in the movement, we talk a lot about this, but just the fact that there's 200 sorts of tomatoes that are possible to grow, from a seed catalog. If you open the Baker Creek seed catalog, and I hope that you guys all have that seed catalog, it's epic, and these folks, we should all be chipping in to support them with just the fact that there's this catalog that they print. Like, you understand all the array of carrots, peppers, eggplants, you name it, beans. There are all these colors, shapes, size, taste. There's all this possibility of growing this diverse diet. And whenever we're at farmers market with our booth and we have all these different, beets from Chioggia, from Touchstone Gold to, Bora beets, they're all different. Think about the fact that if you're not there to produce that and to offer this to your community, where does one get this diversity? Like, nowhere. It's impossible. There's no store, there's no supermarkets, there's no chain that offers this kind of diversity. You'll see perhaps 2 kinds of carrots. You'll see perhaps 3 kinds of lettuce heads. You'll see 4 or 5 different kind of tomatoes, but they're all the same in all these stores because it's all about volumes. So the food revival, the eating well, and that connection to health, gut, soil, but also diversity, of having a diverse diet, of having this chicken, which this breed comes from that place, and that has that flavor. This, and we had our friend from Joe Beef, Dave McMillan, in different podcasts talk about this. This is the original, I would say, French way of life. Okay? When I first visited France, when I was in my early 30s, and I went to the small farmers markets and stores, you would have all this diversity. You would have all these different chicories, radicchios. You would have all these colors. You would have all of that. And that was a fraction of how it was before. Because before in France, before the supermarket, before we could flash freeze and move produce from around the world in these big refrigerated cargo boats and planes, the apex of culture was having all these different vegetables, let's say, or meats or cheese available, and people would know where they were from. And because they were from there, they tasted different and they were special, and people liked that. And it was the same with wine. Wine was all about where it was grown. And still today, a bit less, but still today, this idea of terroir, it comes from that. Terroir is nothing else than a specific variety grown in a specific climate and soil gives a specific taste. And people recognize that. And there was all these connections that were made so that we could enhance that and really realize that this grape grown on this hill, produced this way would give that kind of wine. And if you go back to that French example, I visited different vineyards that are around for 500 years, growing the same grapes. And can you imagine that? 500 years, friends. That means that if, let's say you're the grower, tendering that land, growing these grapes, making that wine, and you do this for 60 years, you're pretty seasoned. You've had 60 seasons under your belt. You know your shit. You know your stuff. And then you're training somebody else that's going to take your place because you're either retiring or you're dying or whatever, but you're passing on the knowledge. And that other person does the same thing for 60 years. And then at the end of his thing, he passes it on. And 500 years is 10 or 12 generations like that. So you understand that in America, we're still so new. And we need to build this kind of connaissance of soil, of diversity. And again, coming back to my point, it's because we're not working with the chains, with the current model, that we can offer this. Okay, so we are fighting against everything that's being customized because we want to be different. But it's not just about being cool and being different. There's also this relationship to tradition, to nourishment, to a way of life rooted in seasonality and soil and experience. And then there's this idea of continuity, of having new people following in these traditions. Okay? That's really important. That's where culture becomes culture, friends. And that's why our farms are so relevant. We are doing this. If we are not there to do this, there's no more of that. Okay? So, coming back to my original question, when did it become cool to be rich? The get rich fast racket will say, okay, let's develop this cheese, and then we'll become good at it, we'll market it, and then we'll grow it, and it's going to be in the, all the states in the US, and then we'll go to international, and then we'll be rich. But you're making one or two product that's blended, and it's not based in community, and it's not original, and it's not that. It's not that. So, but if all of our culture, all the young folks, that's what they're thinking about, like we want to develop this and scale it, and we want to be tech, and we want to get rich, well, who's going to be thinking about this subtle, more, this way of life that we have, this idea of nourishing tradition, this idea of offering this diversity, of being creative, of being rooted in soil, and offering this product that is really specific to where you are, and that's it, and that's perfect. And if people want to taste that, they should travel and come to your place. That's how the Michelin guide got started. So I don't know if you're aware, but our farm-to-table restaurant here, the Old Mill, was awarded a Michelin Green Star. And for me, in my journey in farming, that's a great, great accomplishment. I'm so proud of it. I'm so proud of our team. But it was really funny because one of the first person I talked to when I opened the restaurant was I shouldn't say that, she'll be angry. A senior food critic. She's not old, but she had been doing it for like 30 years. And she said to me, JM, do you know how the Michelin guide got connected with the Michelin tires? Because Michelin is tires. You guys know this. And I said, no. And she said, because back in the days in France, when the automobile was being developed and the roads were being developed, they wanted to sell tires. And to sell tires, people needed to drive their cars to wear down the older tires. So they came up with this idea of, we're going to invite people to different restaurants which are really rooted in terroir. So you really need to go there to eat this experience. And we're going to create a guide, and we're going to invite people to visit, to travel from restaurants to eat and taste this sense of terroir. And that's how the Michelin guide came to be, to sell tires. So anyway, that's not perhaps the perfect example for my message of today. But still, the intention was, you need to move around to appreciate how something local is beautiful. And I think, coming back to my message, this is what our farms offer. And this is what small-scale farming is relevant for. The last piece of the puzzle for me, and that's another important one, is the fact that I've been thinking about solutions to global warming. And I know that global warming is a big turnoff for a lot of folks in the US right now. And in Europe, it's not like that. In Europe, most people are mobilized to fight against global warming. But in my opinion, it's not really that. The problem is really the loss of biodiversity. because of not just climate that is changing, warming up, but also because of development, because of how human population are spreading, how urban sprawling, cities, and all of this is creating this effect on nature where it's being depleted, denuded, and we have, measurable, specific loss of biodiversity. Not that it couldn't come back, because I think that's our job to do, though. But it's definitely, we're on a trajectory, on a course where if we don't self-correct, or if we don't plan and design more with nature and with having all these metrics that are included in how we develop and grow society, civilization, we're definitely losing out with that biodiversity. Okay. I don't want to go in depth in that, and that's not really my forte. I'm not super good at arguing these things so much. I have perhaps 25 years of reading about this, meeting people, talking about this. I have my opinions. But one thing I know for a fact is that small farms, ecological farms, they are a restoration habitat for a lot of this loss of biodiversity. We are creating spaces that is holding water. We are creating space that is, creating habitats for amphibians, for birds, for insects. We have flowers, we have trees, we have everything that's not monoculture or urban sprawling or, suburban development. We are creating and holding space for biodiversity on our farms. We are caretakers and promoters of natural habitats in that way. And I think we should be recognized as such. Before we get that shoulder, that tap on our shoulder, we need ourselves to understand that we're playing that role. And we need to express this. We need to talk about it. We need to show it on social media or whatever. Like, show your farm. Explain that your farm is not just, growing great food for your community, but it's also holding space for biodiversity. And you yourself, you're probably creating ponds. You're probably planting hedgerows. You're probably planting trees. You're regenerating, rewilding, which is a really nice word that I really like. We're really rewilding because we are small-scale farmers. And diversity plays a big role in how we farm. Okay, cover crops, crop rotation, having an array of different, having, chickens on the farm, and then creating pastures for them, which then could become for the vegetables. So all of this is part of what we do. And moving forward, I think it's important for us to talk more about this. Perhaps we'll come up with metrics where we can measure our positive impact. In Europe, farms are paid for this work. In America, it would be amazing if we would get paid for that. But in all cases, paid or not, I think it's important for ourselves to feel good about this because it's important. The other aspect of this is that not only are we part of the rewilding project that needs to happen, but we're also building resiliency in the food system because we are mushrooming farms everywhere. Okay, so you run your own farm. It's 2 acres, 3 acres, 5 acres. You're doing your part. But you're also part of a movement where there's another farm that's going to pop up, and another farm, and another farm, and another farm, and another farm. And perhaps you were instrumental in training some of these new farmers that are mushrooming up. Perhaps you were instrumental because, the extension agent came to your farm, recognized how it was productive and profitable, and then was really open-minded to help other farms. So you're a pioneer species that has allowed for other farms to duplicate. Okay? That's how ecology works and functions. And what's the end game of all these farms? The end game of having more farms on the same terroir is that we are creating resiliency. So if one farm doesn't work, or if one farm has a rough season for human causes, or because of a drought, or because of excess rain, flash flood, hail, whatever, okay, there's another farm there. And then there's another one. 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 If the supply chain, the global supply chain, comes to fall out, to black out for a few days, for a few weeks, for a few months, for a few years, these farms are the only way to feed people, these small local farms. So we're important with the fact that we are also, I had that conversation last time I was going on a rant like this. We're scaling small scale. We're duplicating, okay? Duplicating is a lot more interesting than just growing and massively scaling up, okay? We're scaling out. We're scaling outward. We're multiplying. And we are offering, because of what we do, because of our craft, because of our hardship, because of all that we go through in a day, in a month, in a year, in a season, we're offering food sovereignty, and we are offering diversity and resiliency to the current food system. So the role that we play, friends, is really essential. And unfortunately, not too many people out there are recognizing this and even encouraging this. But I am. And I hope that you will too. I hope that you will understand the importance of small local farms, not just because they're creative, original, authentic, and in my opinion, the best way to spend your day and your life, but also because in the global scheme of things, we are also offering nourishing tradition, and we are offering ecological resiliency to communities. So this is what we are. We're global. And it's never going to be about winning the battle, but I think it is about feeling good about what we're doing and feeling the importance of our movement and holding that space so that we can fight back, we can fight together, we can feel good about who we are, we can celebrate local food, we can attract more people to our movement, we can grow the pie, okay? All these small farms, one of the biggest hurdle is folks that don't want to have more farms because they're thinking, they'll take my market. No. Supermarkets are making a fortune everywhere. Just take margins from them. Just take customers out of supermarkets, bring them back to the local food system. That's the best way to change the world. So I'll leave it at that. I don't know what you think about all of this. I don't know if this resonates for you, but my message for everyone today, if you're on a farm and you're farming and it's the end of season and you're kind of tired, just remember that what you're doing is so important. So at least feel good about that, okay? And if you're not on a farm, then 3 times a day you eat. So make sure that you understand the impact, the positive impact that you have anytime you go and make a detour to eat locally and to encourage, your local artisan. It's a great way to change the world. And in my opinion, it's the only way to have a real impact on today's global system. So I'm going to leave it at that. I hope you guys enjoyed this talk. I'm going to read your comments about it. Don't hesitate to push back with me. I want to counter-argument this. But But, I want to say that to all of you out there, you guys are epic. You guys are wonderful. And at the Market Gardener Institute, man, we're going to kick and fight to the end to push this idea that small scale farming is changing the world, because it is, friends. Okay, talk later. Hope you're enjoying the podcast. These are important conversations, and we're really excited to have them and to share them with everyone. Don't forget to subscribe to it, download the episodes, and please rate them. It makes a difference for us. We want to know what you think about these conversations. They're important. Check out the work that we do at the Market Gardener Institute. You can check out our website, themarketgardener.com. Our mission is to multiply the number of small ecological farms around the world. And we do this by offering training, online courses to new aspiring farmers, but also to seasoned growers. We're helping them take it to the next level. So you can check out the work that we do. You can follow us on social media. You can sign up to our newsletter to get a lot of freebies about gardening, farming, but also about how small-scale farming is changing the world. And that's really what we're all about, and that's really what this is all about. So again, thank you for tuning in. Super excited that you guys are on board. We are changing the world.